Hey, what is going on, everybody? It's your boys from For Those with Good Taste. I'm Matt. As always, he's Lenny. And thanks for joining us for today's show. So we're going to kick this off in typical For Those with Good Taste fashion and just recap some of Lenny's terrible picks from this weekend.
Still the preseason, buddy.
That's okay. But you took a bad one this time.
Still the preseason. Doesn't count till the regular season starts up.
How many times are you going to hit the reset button?
Has the NFL happened yet?
Sure. I guess
I got time in front of me, Matt, and I stand by everything I said. I still think I might have even been right.
You want to elaborate a little bit?
Nope.
Okay.
So let's get into why I hate Anthony Smith.
Good place to start.
This dude, how does a guy, I had this epiphany, Matt, like seconds before the fight happened, and I wanted to erase everything I had said, because I saw the video of him knocking out Shogun. I see this video of him knocking out Shogun, and I'm like, damn it. This man's only ever beat, like, over their, like, past their prime fighters.
Or a guy who wants to be retired, and Alexander Gustafsson.
Yeah, and I instantly was like, oh my God, like, this is just, like, this fight was the John Jones fight all over again. Yeah. Where, like, this guy's not strong enough to go with the people at 205. He got muscled around the whole fight, and it was not a fun one to watch. I don't know how you felt about it.
Man, I feel like I called it again. With Anthony Smith, man, do something. I'm just sitting there with a stick and a dead body. Do something. Yeah,
he was too content. Like, he even pulled guard, I think, at one point in there.
He did.
Like, I don't know, man.
He was taking shots in the clinch and decided to pull guard.
Yeah, and it would be one thing if you actually went for anything, but he was getting wrist control every once in a while, but he wasn't actually going anywhere with it. It wasn't accomplishing anything.
And credit to Aleksander Rakic.
Rakic
did not hesitate to push forward and make Anthony Smith really question himself and question his abilities. And I think that goes a long way to talking about Rakic's future prospects. But, man, did you miss an opportunity, Anthony Smith? What is going on, dude?
I think the interesting thing, talking about Rakic, and I think what happens is the first round, he's so dominant in the stand-up round, and then also feels what it's like to be on the ground. And he's like, oh, if I'm in top control here, like, I'm going to control this whole fight. This guy can't move me.
I can do what I want.
So think about what that does to you, especially when you're in a 3-round fight. So he doesn't have to worry about his gas tank nearly as much, and he's able to just really get on that top game each round and just maintain, gets him into the cage and kind of stifles him and keeps him there. And Anthony Smith, again, I can't stress enough, the guy just played guard, but he wasn't really playing guard.
Let's start from the first round. So the first round, from the immediate get-go, they're exchanging leg kicks and calf kicks. And Anthony Smith looks game, and then he eats a really bad calf kick.
2 in a row. Why aren't you... He didn't check a single one, though. Like, his strategy was to eat one and give it right back.
And when does that work?
It's not... Well, I mean, it's just like, one of them it was going to work for. But you're really, like, killing your odds. Just, like, be somewhat strategic, dude. Like, I don't get it.
And that's where I wonder where the tactical ability of Anthony Smith or even his team comes into play, because if your game plan was to match strike for strike with Alexander Rakic, once you realize that it's not working, you're taking huge amounts of damage to your legs. What point are you pulling out and trying to do something else? And then when he did try to grapple, he gets muscled up against the cage, and it's almost, to your point, he's got wrist control, but he's not really doing much else from there. Yeah, it was difficult to watch. And then we got to, I don't know if this is just Anthony Smith doesn't have the talent to fight at 205, or if, I mentioned not knowing who's going to show up, whether it's going to be somebody who takes the fight seriously. Another fight where I'm just waiting. Man, this is a 3-round fight, and I still feel like I can't get through it.
He's a little gun shy, it seems like, after the Glover fight, maybe too. Before we get into where they go next, just to speak to Alexander Rakic enough, a little bit. We didn't really give him a good shine last week, and it's probably just because neither one of us really had watched too much with him, which shame on us. We need to do our research a little bit more there.
So credit to him, but also he knocks out Jimmy Manuwa in 17 seconds.
It was a beautiful knockout, though. I feel like I didn't actually watch that until right before the Anthony Smith fight, and I watched it and I was like, that was the same thing where I think they showed me that, and then they showed me the Shogun fight, and I was like, oh, I'm an idiot.
Yeah,
I just
probably
instantly was like, I'm so dumb, dude.
I feel like I deserve a draw there.
No,
I felt like
it's the preseason, dude. Nobody needs draws. The record doesn't count. Nobody's keeping score at home.
Great man once said, if you're not first, you're last.
Yeah, he was a great man.
I live and die by that.
Yeah.
So where does I guess we kind of know where Anthony Smith goes.
He's
going into...
He actually came out, and I'm sorry to cut you off, but did you see that he had a statement post-fight?
No, he's talking. I'm not listening.
I read it, so I didn't have to hear his voice. Thank God. He mentions that he's got to figure out the weight class thing, because he admits, he was like, I just couldn't keep up with how strong Rakic was on top of me. I just couldn't handle it. So he's like, but the thing is, to go back to middleweight isn't just as easy as say, hey, just have a little longer camp, cut down weight earlier in camp. He's like, that's an entire lifestyle change for me to comfortably get to 185. And he's like, if I go up another weight class, I'm already too small at the one I'm at, so I can't do that. So he's like, he's really preaching or pushing for more weight classes. He's like, this isn't a case where I want to play within the rules, but he's like, it would be really great if there was a 195 class that I could fall into.
Him playing by the rules, if he fights at 185, he wasn't really stellar at 185 either.
Because the conversation that I think it's Rogan always kind of brings up is the give and take of cutting weight.
Yeah, are you really getting to fight at your full abilities?
Yeah, we look at a guy like Frankie Edgar a week previous, and we say to ourselves, wow, he might have gotten another little bit of a rejuvenation in his fighting career by going down a weight class. Even Jose Aldo gets another shot at a title by going down, but does Anthony Smith benefit the same way dropping down 20 pounds? And that's a huge jump, mind you. It's not from 45 to 35, which is still huge because of body weight. It's an unfair jump
when you think about those guys at that weight class, because if you're putting on 10 pounds, you're going to be huge. If you're putting on 20 pounds, that's incredible. You
see the guys in recent history too. Smith has had some success at light heavy, but he's starting to see the downside of all of this. But you had Weidman and you had Rockhold both try to go up, and both have the same level of success there, where you put them in there and they're contenders at 185, but they get in there with these guys that are fringe top 5 light heavyweights, and they can't eat the punches. They can't take the punishment.
So that sweet spot of 195, it just makes sense.
I think at every weight class, you see justification, especially when you get up over 55, where you start to get bigger gaps. You get bigger gaps in spaces, 15, 20-pound gaps. And it also comes back to like body fat percentages and stuff. Like that's where I was going to say, like 145, 135, there's just not a lot of fat that you're going to cut at that level to go down another weight class. Yeah. I don't think.
But think about it. I just want to mention, Frankie went down to 135 and still wasn't the bigger guy.
Yeah.
He was still the smaller guy. So when we talk about these guys at 185, I mean, do you see a matchup for Anthony Smith that he comes in and is immediately hitting the gate running? Like, it'd be tough to match him up at that division.
I don't know what he does. He's in a really shitty spot, just to be completely honest. This is one of those few times coming out of it where I'm like, I don't know what's really best for him, And
it's tough because he's got a really cushy commentator gig. And they genuinely like him as a commentator.
Yeah, well, we'll see.
It'll be tough. But one thing...
Rakic, too. I'm sorry. That guy, I mean, we were talking about light heavyweight, like, tournament for the title. Drop him right in that conversation.
Well, that's what I was going to say. One thing that we can take away from this fight for sure is that Aleksander Rakic is mounting a very steady path to the title at this point. I mean, if he can, he's knocked off Volkan Ozdemir, who's fought for a title. I'm sorry, he lost to Volkan Ozdemir, but it was a very close fight. Mm-hmm. So let's say if that goes his way, he beats Anthony Smith. Light heavyweight's not a division where you have to mount up a ton of wins to really push for a title.
Not only that, I'm struggling right now to think. I'm like, who's a really strong grappler at 205 right now? They're pretty much all. I guess you could say
Glover is a striker, but he's good.
He's great. He's a really good top game guy. Yeah. So I mean, maybe him, but he's got to get you to the ground, and that's kind of where he's got a good clinch takedown game, I believe. But I don't really recall him having a ton of like open space double leg takedowns. But
it was also just tough to kind of gauge his abilities just based on kind of how much Anthony Smith didn't really deliver after those later rounds.
Even in general, he's a good. Yeah. We've seen him grapple, but you don't know exactly. He'd be the one question mark here, but they're all pretty much evenly matched in the way that they're all just high level strikers with varying degrees of strength of chin, and that's what it comes down to. Is like Dominic Reyes seems like he has a good chin. Rakic seems like he has a good chin. Glover, we know, can take a beating. Anthony Smith, for what it's worth, can take a beating. He's just a punching bag. He's like, I was thinking about him. I was like, you're Homer Simpson. That first round, I was like, you are Homer Simpson. You are just out here hoping this man gasses out punching you.
Well, what is the game plan? I just
There
want
was
to know
none.
what the
There
game
was none.
plan
It
was.
was sad
You're
to
saying
say.
that he can take a punch. It's not that he can take a punch. It's what other choice does he have? He's going in there with dangerous guys, and he's just not getting knocked out.
Mhm.
So you're just taking damage.
Homer Simpson.
Homer Simpson.
Yeah. So Rakic, I really look forward to him. This will drop him into that top 5 rankings there. A guy like Kutalaba who's now twice failed for COVID and had his fights canceled. Maybe push his spot out, not due to anything of his own, but we just can't keep waiting. And I actually read this, dude, and when you get it twice and have to have your fight pulled, are we kind of saying, like, it's on you at that point, right? Like, what are you doing to keep yourself safe? Because I don't see anybody else who's failed twice in the fighting world at this point.
I would be curious to see what that process looked like. Was it he tested positive, he quarantined, came back and tested negative, and then tested positive again?
That's what I would imagine. For them to put him on another card means that he went through the quarantine process, got onto another card, because he was supposed to fight, I think, on the DC card.
He was.
Right. So he did the 14 days incubation period, whatever you want to call it, and then comes back and tries to fight again, and then he pops day of the fight, which also scares me, because he's been around a couple guys, and this brings my attention to the OSP fight that's been rescheduled. Yeah, what's going to go on? And I'm sure they're thinking about that too.
Well, that's going on this weekend.
Mm-hmm.
So if guys are popping, if you're not testing guys until fight night, or you're not at least taking them or pulling them from the card until fight night, that's tricky.
This comes back to the original, because that happened the very first fight the UFC put on. They had somebody get pulled off the week of, right? And I guess it comes down to...
Jacare Souza.
Yes. So it comes back to the turnaround time on a lot of these tests. And because you're just finding that it's taking... that wasn't a test that guy got that day, right? Yeah. So he would have been there and had it for 2 or 3 days, and he failed the test, and then he probably passed one. He probably passed a couple, and then he failed one. And that's why you get pulled off Saturday, the day of the fight. So they thought he was good, and then all of a sudden... So it's like, how long has he actually had it? Where's it going from here? It also comes back to the stuff with football right now, where they had like the 75 false positives. Do we even know that all of it's fucking real?
There's not enough information. And if you're only giving guys 14 days between bookings, like the OSP fight was supposed to happen 2 weeks ago.
I was amazed that like he's fighting this weekend and that Kutalaba got booked again so quickly. They got
rebooked, and it's like, okay, so you guys rebooked knowing that they would need at least 14 days. So you're hoping that they are quarantined, and by the time that fight night comes up, that they're going to test negative. That doesn't make sense to me.
And also, what happens is that they stay there on Fight Island or at the Apex for the full 14 days because they're quarantining anyways. So are they just staying in that same... Because I'd go fucking crazy. And like, you're not seeing your family for like Kutalaba. If you went, that's training? A month, right? Yeah, I mean, you're like, that's tough. You're probably training in the Rome. Like, what do you... It doesn't... I don't know. It's a lot of fucking questions, man. Like, and not enough answers.
But who are we to question what they've been able to do so far?
Yeah.
It's just really interesting with these bookings that are happening so quickly after a positive test. I would love to know the deeper conversation. I'd love to know what the process is there, because Jacare has yet to be scheduled for a fight.
Yeah, and maybe it's up to the fighter too. You know, like, hey, I'm going to stick around, see if this clears up. I feel fine. Like, you know, they could be asymptomatic, so it could just be, I feel fine. Let me get this out of the system. I want to go still, so I'm going to stay here. But we can talk about this all day. There's so many, like you said, unanswered questions on Corona that we'll never know because neither one of us care enough to read.
We're also not scientists.
Yeah.
I read what I can, personnel. I listen to what I can, and I try to follow the rules.
Exactly. So we got this one wrong, and we'll move on to another one that I got wrong.
Yeah, you want to... I get really excited about this one. This one I had my eye on for sure.
Dude, I don't want to sound like a douchebag, like common MMA fan, but fuck Neil Magny. He fought like a bitch. I said it, dude. I don't take it back either. Like, I'm salty. Like, I felt salty for Robbie Lawler. Like, you could see in his face, and I felt the same way when I was like, dude, just get off him. I was like sitting there. I'm like, I felt like I need blood MMA fan. I was like, get off him, dude. Like, throw punches, you pussy.
Welcome to my life when GSP was running through everybody. Yeah. Just grabbing them and holding them.
You're just picking against them every month?
Every single time, and I'd lose every single time.
You talked about, and I heard your words in my head, like, as I was watching the fight, because I believe you had mentioned last week, Robbie Lawler maybe being a little gun shy, and I was nervous for the first 2 rounds because it did seem a lot like He was waiting for the takedown. And I think it's just because once Neil Magny started, like Neil Magny,
when he turns it on,
dude, he did not stop. He was a wet blanket the entire time.
You talk about the wrestling. And when I look at that first round, the Colby Covington fight played again in my head because I was thinking about how many times Neil would come forward and just throw either a lunging straight or a very nice jab. And he was connecting every time. And every time, if you could freeze frame it, Robbie is kind of almost about to throw.
He's getting caught right in the in-between beat of the strike.
Right as he's all in his head with these strikes. And I mentioned it last week about it being a 3-round fight. You have very minimum opportunities to really pull the trigger and be able to sway the judges in one way or the other. Because one thing's for sure is that if Neil's coming forward and he gets his hands on you, you're going to have a bad time.
I heard, while I was watching that fight, I was thinking a lot about like the Conor McGregor thing where it's like timing beats speed. So kind of what you're saying where Robbie Lawler has really, really good fast twitch muscles. So, but you can see him kind of cocking for the punch, right?
You can see it every time.
And then you have Magny, who's no wind-up, and he's just landing, right? Yes. So he's just really popping him, and that's where he's beating him to the punch on those. And then you look at the punches that were more impactful. Robbie did land some really powerful punches, especially in the third round, and that's where I was going to get to. But what you were seeing is, so it's timing beats speed, but it's precision beats power. And you were seeing that Magny just wasn't really missing on the feet. He was just doing enough to stay in range and landing, and that threat of the grappling was there the entire time. And I think you mentioned the Covington fight. To my memory, the difference with the Covington fight is Covington spent a lot more time throwing volume punches.
Yes.
And then kind of mixing in the clinch, whereas Magny went the first 2 rounds primarily just grappling. And Robbie Lawler, like to his credit, takedown defense is still very good. And his defensive like grappling ability is fantastic. Like to get out of that fight.
There were a couple times where Neil had double underhooks and it looked like he was going to wrap him around the waist and take him down. Every single time Robbie was able to get out of it. It was pretty cool.
He'd have him in double hooks from the back, like, and he'd be looking to choke him out, and he just couldn't find the spot. And you know, I was mentioning the gun shy thing with you, and I think you called that really well. But the third round, I love that. The one confidence I had through that whole fight, I was like, Robbie Lawler comes from a camp that he's been with wrestlers his whole career, so he can deal with this, and I don't think he's going to get tired. We've seen him fight. Who did he win the belt off of? Johnny Hendricks. And they had some really good wrestling exchanges and things like that. So you're pretty confident with Lawler that he's going to make it through. And because he's been with that same camp the whole time, by the time you get to the third round, they're just basically like, hey, Robbie, we got to fucking go.
And like Robbie does not shy away.
Yeah, he was like, they're like, you need to go or you're going to lose this. And he just turns it on in the third round. And every moment they're on the feet, you can feel Magny's a little bit nervous.
So to put you in my shoes, while watching that fight, I go into that third round and I know exactly what's coming. If Robbie's going to start throwing, it's going to be a bad time for Neil. And the whole time I'm like, Neil, don't you fucking lose this fight, dude. Because if I have to go in the studio and listen to Lenny just raw dog the entire situation of, oh, Robbie Lawler's just going to, he's a crafty vet. He's going to put on it.
I would have danced all over your grave.
I just wasn't ready for that. So Neil definitely didn't disappoint, but man, that third round was dicey. I was really, really nervous.
He still ended up winning it too, mind you, but like Robbie definitely had moments. And it sucks because you look and you're like, where does Robbie really go now either? I don't have much of a foresight to tell you where I see him. And even Neil Magny, for that, what it's worth, Neil Magny is going to be a perennial in my head, like 8 to 15 ranked fighter. But I just don't know that I can see him beating the top of the top in the division. Like I think Usman, I throws this dude around.
I could see him very well doing Dana White's dirty work in the welterweight division.
Getting rid of some guys for him.
Getting rid of the guys that you really kind of got to flesh out in order to get clarity in the division. But I could also see him being used as a guy to springboard other top contenders. Being somebody that, hey, we know that Neil's going to put pressure on you, and if you can get past Neil's pressure, deal with his grappling, it's going to put you in a good place. Neil's beaten some serious guys at 170
I think
pounds.
He still would. I think if you matched him up with Wonderboy Thompson, or even for what it's worth, like Jorge Masvidal, it's going to be a tough fight for those guys because of that pressure that he can put on and his willingness to just grapple and say, fuck it. I think he's going to be an issue for some of these guys where he'll stifle you and you won't always get a most exciting fight. Because I'm not sitting here telling you that I thought this fight was like all that thrilling. Like I found it I found main and co-main to be relatively boring, personally.
Yeah, it was tough to get through. And as we're looking at some of these cards that the UFC is putting on, we've got a handful of cards that, besides that main and co-main, it's going to be pretty difficult to get through.
Yeah.
So, with that being said, UFC 4.
Actually, no, we're missing one thing, buddy.
What are we missing?
We have a fight next week. We just want to real quick, get the pick out there. It is still preseason. And again, we're like Rakic. We just are going into this one blind. I know Sakai came from the Dana White Contender Series. He's got 4 fights in the UFC. He's 4-0, but he has fought nobody the caliber of Overeem. So my pick is Alistair Overeem. Mark it on the books, gentlemen. Or ladies, whoever.
I just want to go against you on this one.
Sure.
I don't want Overeem. So
I'll tell everybody out in the world, just bet against me. It's probably going to go well.
Let me just clear it out by saying this. Alistair Overeem, since he stopped eating horse meat and taking those huge tranquilizers, what's he done at heavyweight? He's been a perennial contender where he's constantly being fed guys that are going to set him up for a title fight.
He usually gets there, though.
He gets there. I mean, he hasn't fought for a title in a little bit.
I feel like he's only like 5 fights removed from a title fight, though.
Sure, but in those 5 fights, he's gotten his face lacerated probably 3 or 4 different times.
Yeah. He almost beat Stipe, though.
He did almost beat Stipe. A lot of guys almost beat Stipe.
Okay.
You could say that about... No, I guess you really can't say that about Francis Ngannou. Francis Ngannou got dominated. But, so you're going with Overeem. I'm going to go with the unknown man, Sakai, because I think it's time for a changing of the guard.
Okay. Mark it down, everybody. Matt will be right, most likely. Fuck.
I'm going to continue on this hype train, this steamroll, baby. We're on pace for some big numbers this year.
Yep.
So, hot off the heels off of a new release that you and I were definitely excited about, a new installment of the UFC series straight out of EA. UFC 4 released a couple of weeks ago, and after a long anticipated wait, I finally got to play it for an hour and a half.
About that.
Had a good time with it, but you've had a little bit more time than I've had. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, I think I've had it since the release day. I happened to line up a vacation with when it came out, so I bought it the first day of my vacation. I've had it for probably 2 weeks now. Spent the first week or so just strictly playing the franchise mode. Okay. I'm a big player of the online. To give a little backstory, I played UFC 3 a ton, more than probably most. I'm a big fan of the franchise. It's a game that I can just kind of throw on and play for a few minutes. I'll play it sometimes before work in the morning. I'll just get 2 matches in before I go to work because it's kind of the perfect game to play for 30 minutes. So I was really looking forward to this new one coming out. I've been pretty satisfied so far. I think like anybody, that first couple weeks, the first week I had it, I was like, they changed this or they changed that, and I don't necessarily love it. And I'll definitely tell you some of the things I'm still not a fan of. But
when you look at what you've seen so far, I mean, we've come a long way with these video games.
Yeah.
You and I have played through them, since the first one. What's some of that feeling when you're playing it? What were you, excited by it? Did it bring back some feel good, memories, anything like that?
As I've played it, I've become more excited by it. Again, like I was saying, the first week, I think it was a lot of getting comfortable with the new changes that you've seen in the game. And it's got those very, it has EA's fingerprints all over it. Yeah. And I don't mean bullshit microtransactions. I mean, the fact that
other fingerprint.
Yes. The crazy thing is, this game had about, I want to say 2 to 3 years in between releases of titles, right? Yeah. So I'd be lying if I told you I wasn't initially a little disappointed with what the offer was, because I didn't feel a tremendous amount of difference. And I even do think that there are regression in some ways, but I can also point out some things that after having a couple weeks to play with it and being very hands-on, that I have enjoyed quite a bit. So I think if you're looking for a game that is built around striking and you just want a more evolved, sophisticated version of a striking game, this is it, right? It's if you want Mortal Kombat or if you want Tekken, those games are out there where it's very it's and just lateral movements and a lot of just combinations.
It's not a ton of strategy to it. Right? Unless you're those guys that are spending 16, 18 hours playing. Yes. You're not really
learning button combinations and things like that, right? Sure. So this is going to be a lot more of an evolved striking campaign, and they have the knockout mode still. They still have all of that stuff. If you just want to do stand and bang, that is a version of the game. Where I think it's regressed personally for me is on the ground itself. But funny enough, the part that I think it's improved is the in-between.
The transitions.
Yes. So what I think is like the clinch game is phenomenal. They've done this really great thing with the motion now, where rather than having a button sequence or button mashing thing that you have to do to try and get out of a out of a grappling exchange, now when you're on the feet, you're primarily using just your body motion, which makes a lot more sense. So you were seeing this a little earlier while we were playing it, right?
It's a huge changeover from and maybe that's just the way that I play the game. I'm not as patient as you are. I know that you're very, disciplined when it comes to, learning the fighting styles and figuring out all the intricate ways that you can be more effective. That was the difficult part for me, was just understanding that you kind of got to sit back and be more realistic. You're not seeing guys in real life go from transition to transition extremely quickly. And that's been the part that I'm noticing. It seems a little bit difficult at first glance, but it does seem like it's going to be something I'm going to enjoy.
Yeah, I think the reason I always look forward to buying these is because I like the idea of it is a game that requires strategy. It is a game that we will reward you for taking your time and learning different combinations. In learning distance and things like that, you will get rewarded when you throw strikes at certain times and things like that. Also, just sticking to a game plan and having patience. But like I was saying, when you get to the ground, the issue is, and I think you saw it, is it's like, if you don't invest time and maybe play like the career mode and stuff like that, where you have to train in between each fight and learn these positions specifically, do parts of your camp that are just jujitsu and just wrestling. That's how I was able to get decently good at it. You're just a fish out of water in this game. And they've actually made it easier in some ways, like on the ground. It is very streamlined to make it easier for the new player. But what you're seeing is the part that it's very hard on is cardio in this game. And it's the key that I have found from all of the UFCs with EA is cardio plays a very big role in how successful you are in these fights. Because if you just go out there and throw for the whole first round, or you get...
Like your boy!
Yes. Or if you get taken down and you're immediately panicked and you're going to try and stand right back up, like your boy, they will punish you for doing so, right?
And we've seen their progression over after release, where if you're able to utilize and be disciplined with your cardio and your striking, it's going to be significantly more effective.
Yeah, I that's always been my biggest strength, has been my cardio capability, and it's been the biggest test for me adjusting to this new game. And like I was mentioning before, and I'll get into a little bit, if you do end up playing this game, I strongly recommend before you do anything else, just start the career mode, hop in there and just kind of allow yourself to learn the game itself. It does a very good job of teaching you. And I just like in general the way it kind of lays it out, because they don't stray too far from what they've done in previous games. You do just kind of start as a rookie fighter in a backyard, like fighting
smokers.
Yeah, like you're fighting smokers in a strip club parking lot in the start of this game, and it's pretty cool. And you get found by a trainer, and he's like, "Hey, like come train at the gym. You want to like fight real people." And then you get your chance while you're fighting to kind of either go the route of like the Dana White Contenders series really earlier in your career, or if you want to say no to them, you can keep fighting on the regional scene and end up in a company like WFA or something like that.
Yeah, one of the smaller circuits.
Yeah, and win the title there. And then eventually, like for the strategy I took was win the title, defend the title, and then when you go into the UFC, if you do it that way, I got immediately dropped into a top 5 fight and like was right there ready to fight a title. And I was already, my character was good and I was prepared to fight, because in between each one of these fights, they allot you points. You basically get 100 points. And like you get
attribute points.
And
similar to like Madden and FIFA, things
but
like
the
that.
difference here is that you are responsible not only for the evolution of your player, you're also you're responsible for the growth of your popularity.
Okay.
And how popular you are dictates how quickly you raise through the rankings and how much you demand big fights. And it also dictates how much money you get paid on your contracts. And when you get paid for your contracts, it gives you the ability to buy moves and buy training partners to learn new moves.
And it kind of seems like they've taken similar concepts from some of those earlier games and just kind of taken them to the next level to make it so that you're a lot more hands-on. At least from what I've seen and just some of the reviews that you've given me, it really seems like they can kind of play to that casual viewer. And it could be something that even if you're not a hardcore MMA fan or UFC fan, it's something that you can pick up and have some fun with.
Yeah, I definitely, if you are a fan of fighting games and if you've played any of the UFCs, I think you'll enjoy playing this. I can certainly see if you don't have somebody there who knows the game that well that can kind of help guide you maybe a little bit. Like, speak to this real quick because you are maybe a little bit newer into this. If I wasn't here kind of with you when you were playing that, how long would you have played that for? Because I could tell you were maybe getting a little frustrated with some of the grappling exchanges, stuff like that.
I think for me, I'm a natural head case when it comes to video games. I'm sure a lot of people could relate. It would have been tough because, kind of having you as like my head trainer or my coach, kind of walking me through what you were seeing me do, it was getting very difficult because things that I knew would work in previous games, maybe it was setting down on my punches, making sure that I'm not moving forward when I'm throwing those punches or button mashing. It would have been tough to get through for sure.
Yeah. So when you do the campaign mode, it definitely like if you just choose like, cause you can get injured in camp in the campaign, you can also injure your training partners and stuff. But the one thing that's always available to you is fighting with the heavy bag. But one of the things is they give you 3 specific types of combinations each round. And then you get a free run depending how quickly you beat those 3 combinations that you have to do.
So those things used to be fun, but they used to be so frustrating.
Oh, so I was going to get into this, dude. Like it gets like sometimes you'll go insane because you can't figure out why you can't hit one of these combinations. But the flip side to that is I've gotten good at knowing some of the different strikes that I can throw because of doing those things and it making me do them over and over again. Yeah. And I'm a huge, like the way you were getting frustrated when I play these games, especially when I play it by myself, if I'm getting in halfway through the first round and I've gotten taken down 3 times, I'm the guy who's going to just restart and just, okay, I did this wrong. I know what I can do to improve. And that's where I was telling you, like, this game's a lot more of don't just go out there and throw strikes. Like, go out there, use your footwork, establish.
It's not about button mashing at all.
Yeah, establish distance. Use your jab, work behind your jab to get them to back up. And then, like, because their movement, and like I told you, I always start playing the computer because once you play a real person, they make mistakes. The computer in these games, when you get up to the higher difficulties, they just don't make mistakes. So it's really
they're on the money with every strike. If they're trying to pull you in for a clinch game,
they're prepared for you to throw strikes. You can't just throw leg kicks because they're going to get checked. Like they know what's coming. So but it makes you as the user become a lot better because now you have to become very strategic. And like you saw, you played a character and I played him right after, and it was an instant difference in the way that like I was able to carry control my fighter and control what the other gentleman was doing. In this case, Leon Roberts catching that 3 pieces of soda.
Leon Edwards.
Fuck. Leon Roberts.
That's okay. We'll eventually get good with names.
MMA ref, I think. Yeah, it doesn't matter.
That sounds about right.
But yeah, I would definitely give the game a thumbs up. And if you're a fan of the franchise, if you're a person who doesn't want to take the time to learn this game, wait till it's on sale for $20.
Yeah, that's the big question is what's the investment value, right? Is this worth dropping your money on right now? And at least for me, being the person who hasn't purchased the game, getting hands-on, having my own little personal demo, I think I'm bought in. I think it got me excited once I got through the frustrating parts. I'd be really excited to jump into career mode and just experience that aspect of it.
There are things that EA does well, right? Like the career mode, I think, is something that the creative fighter is pretty good. It's pretty detailed and fun. I liked doing that. I liked being able to pick my fighting style and like the benefits that it gives you for fighting within that fighting style versus fighting without it or outside of it rather. I do like that. At the same time, like there's going to be aspects that aren't necessarily as easy to just jump into,
I gotcha. So we giving this a thumb up?
I definitely would put that thumb somewhere up.
I'm going to put it like this because I'm interested, but I haven't purchased it yet.
Yeah, well, I've invested $52, I think, into it because I got a discount for EA Access.
Sweet.
So thumbs up from me. If you are a fan of any of the previous games, I highly recommend it. If you're a fan of fighting games, I definitely recommend it. If you've already bought it, let me know how you feel about it. Or if you're going to buy it, let us know about that too.
Or if you're trying to catch those hands online.
If you're good, though, don't tell me because I don't like. I've had enough hits to my ego between picking UFC fights. I don't need you whooping my ass online.
I'm 100% okay with building up your stock to have you get beaten online. I'm all right with that.
Yeah. Generally, if you do want to play online, let me know and I'll record it and let everybody see you kill me.
And we could make that a weekly thing.
Yeah. Buy the game, guys. Beat me weekly.
It's worth it. Check it out.
I'll only stop playing after the first 3 weeks.
See, I don't see that. You're a guy who, even if you put in like a terrible losing streak, you'll pick it up eventually because you're feeling yourself for a challenge.
Yeah, you're right. And I say I'd lose. I'll fucking whoop all your asses. Oh, I said it. I'm not taking it back.
He doesn't like to back down, folks.
He won't back down. Pink said that once.
Never back down. Movie with Digimon Hanzo.
Yeah, and some other guy from the OC.
Yeah, don't know that guy.
And we're out. This has been fun. So one of the big happenings in the world right now is the way that movies are kind of starting to get consumed. And I thought that'd be kind of a cool topic for us to jump into maybe a little bit today, as I find myself to probably be one of the most avid movie goers that you'll meet.
You're definitely the person who watches more movies than anybody else I know.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily know if that's true. I never really try to say that. What I do think is I go to the actual movie theater more than anybody that most people know. I'm a 1 to 2 time a week viewer. I get the most out of my Stubbs membership. I go all the time. And so for me, this quarantine has been a very big impactor on the things that I kind of do on my days off and just after I got out of work. Sometimes I like to do that.
Your hobbies a little bit, huh?
Yeah. And so now the interesting thing now that we're kind of starting to break out of this quarantine is the way that movies are starting to come out. And I think this week, and the reason it kind of popped into my head and I thought it'd be cool that we would talk about it, and I was excited when you brought this up, is I'm a fan of the Bill and Ted series.
Yeah.
And Bill and Ted's just came out this past weekend, and a lot of people are becoming excited about the fact that new releases are going to be available to them in the video on demand process, that you can just go right onto the internet and buy whatever or rent whatever movie that would typically have been released in the movie theaters and just watch it from your couch, right? Yeah. You can even own it right off of the bat now. And I do think for some of what it is cool. But I also can speak from my perspective, and I'd be interested to see what your perspective is on it, that I actually am not a huge fan of it personally for myself.
So I think that's where you and I would differ. And not so much differ like, hey, I don't like going to the movies. But you know me, the way that I take in the majority of my content is streaming. Yeah. I don't purchase a lot of movies. I usually just, I'll jump into Netflix, I'll jump into Hulu, HBO Max. But a lot of what I do is streaming. So when I do go to the movie theaters, it's genuinely, an event or an occasion for me and the wife. And we have a good time. Or, if I've gone to the movies with you, we're going to see a movie that we're really hyped about. So I'm a go every once in a while person for movies, so it didn't really affect me. And to have movies like, when we look at Disney Plus, Mulan coming straight out to streaming later on this month, that gets me excited. But it's also tough knowing that movies and going to a movie theater just isn't going to be what it used to be. So I'd be interested to see what you think about that.
I listen to kind of what you say there, and I think it really highlights a difference here. Because I think one of the first things that people say about the movies is it's cheaper for me to watch it at home. But I think it's cheaper maybe in your instance, and it's a little bit more of a production for you to go to the movies, right? Yep. Because you do have more than just yourself to think about when you go to the movies. And I do see the benefits for this new change for a lot of people. For myself, where it's primarily, I go to the movies a lot by myself. And it was one of the best things that ever really happened to me was when I got comfortable just going to a movie on my own, because it's quiet, people don't bother you.
You get to take it in the way that it's supposed to be taken.
And I go so much that I have the membership. I pay $20 a month and I see as many movies as I really want to see.
Eating a lot of popcorn.
Yeah. I really just have to pay for concessions at that point. So I go to the movies 10 times a month. And when I was going consistently, I would go 10 times a month, but I was really only spending, $10 when I go, maybe, because I was getting those tickets for free.
Really taking advantage of an industry that's been making a lot of money off people.
Yeah. So I look for you and it's well, if you wanted to go to the movies, it's 100% cheaper, right? Because each ticket's $12. So you're already at $25 right off the bat. You want to buy popcorn and drinks for you and your girl.
$60 later.
You're already there. So I totally can feel for you guys and why you would want to be able to view these movies at home, because Bill and Ted's, for instance, that's $20. Mulan, you brought that up. I think that's a little bit more of an interesting scenario, and maybe that's a whole other conversation we need to get into.
Sure.
Is because Disney is making you pay not only a subscription price to have their service, but now they're also going to charge you $35 to watch a movie on top. And I don't fault them. That movie was $300 million after promotion and everything like that. They're probably still going to lose money on this, but that is a lot to ask of somebody to see that movie. $30 to watch Mulan. I couldn't envision myself paying that. I would wait. It's the same thing with Bill and Ted's. I really want to watch that movie, but for me, $25 to own that movie in 4K, like I'm gonna have to wait till it's on sale. Like I can't envision it being worth $25. But that's a movie where if the movie theaters were still open at full capacity, I would have gone and seen that on a random Thursday.
It would have just been another day.
Yeah, it would have just been another movie that I was going to see. And I actually, part of the reason we want to talk about this is like the idea of just going back into a physical movie theater is a little daunting for some people now. I had tickets to go to the movies tomorrow to see Tenet. I'm not going to be able to make it, but I was something that I was really, really excited to see. And I'm not too worried about going to the movies. I think that 30% capacity, people aren't going to be sitting directly next to you while you're there. And I couldn't see seeing a Christopher Nolan movie on a small screen for the first time.
Wouldn't do it a service.
Like, it just doesn't seem worth it to me. And I had seen the prologue for Tenet months back, and I probably had talked to you about it. I talked to everybody because like I was blown away by this prologue.
You were excited.
I had no idea what it was about, but that prologue was like 10 minutes of like suspense, and like it was really, really like palpable like tension when we were watching it. And so like I really want to see that in IMAX, and I'm gonna end up seeing it. But do you foresee, like, especially with you having a baby at home, like other people to really think about? Not to say I don't, but I guess I don't have those same ramifications that you do.
No, it's an interesting way to look at it, right? Because when I say that movies were an event, I could count on how many times on my hand that my wife would be like, "Hey, we haven't been to the movies in a while," and you gotta.
I hope your wife doesn't watch this. That's a shitty impersonation.
She's not a huge fan of me.
Yeah.
Anyway, but it's one of those things where, having a newborn, having a kid at home, I would say every time I leave my house is somewhat of an interesting adventure because you don't really know what you're going to get. You go into stores and it's a mixed bag. Some people are following rules. A lot of people aren't. When I think about the movies or just going to a theater and how much kind of pressure is on that industry right now with, not being able to have films for a couple of months. And you're also looking at the people who've made these films invest a ton of money. To me, I feel like every movie theater is going to have to take every step possible to make this right. And not every industry is going to be in that position. So for me, if I'm looking at going to a cinema, I'd feel a little bit more comfortable doing that because I feel like they are probably taking the proper precautions. And with the lack of information that we have around COVID with Corona, it does feel like that's an industry where, because there's so much at stake for them, they really, to your point, if we do go to a completely streaming platform, man, there's a lot of businesses that are going out right now. Yeah,
you mentioned stakes, and it makes me think, like, I think a big driving force also in me wanting to go is, to your point, like, how long can movie theaters exist with 30% capacity and things like that, and if people are afraid to go? And it's a medium of like entertainment for me that like it's been a very big impactor. Like when I was a little kid, I would go on Saturdays and I would get dropped off at the movies and I would see 3 movies in one day before I'd come home. Like we'd line up our day. This was when you'd get the newspaper in the morning. Oh, yeah. You couldn't just buy the tickets from your phone. So I'd have to get the newspaper first thing in the morning.
You have to line up your movies.
Yeah. I'd be like, okay, this movie's 2 hours long. It starts at noon. I can get into this one if I go at this time. And then like we'd spend the whole day there. Right. So it had a huge impact on me. So now at this point, like I want to go just because I don't want to see it go away. Like and there is like drive-ins are kind of getting a resurgence right now, but I think that's a totally different viewing experience. I don't think you're getting the same that you're going to get in terms of screen quality or anything else.
I'm actually really glad that you brought that up because there's been somewhat of a positive wave of talk like, oh, we're going to get the drive-in back. We're going to, bring back that particular side of the entertainment business. But I have few memories of the drive-in. Some of them are good. But when you think about some of the movies, again, there's only certain movies that I go to the movie theater to watch. And it's one of those things where I want to be able to enjoy. If I'm going to see Batman, I'm going to see it with all the sound effects.
Well, you want like the speakers. You want the dark room.
I need the environment.
Yes.
I can't have, my car speaker being what's going to provide that type of experience to me.
I'm a huge horror movie fan, right? And the most recent horror movie that I remember like having a huge impact when I saw it in the theaters was like, I remember seeing the Halloween remake or, reboot, whatever. Sequel, I guess. But either way, I remember seeing that and I saw like the not midnight release, but like the first day release, like the Thursday night, 7 p.m., whatever, you go and see it. And I just remember
the premiere, so to speak.
Yeah. And I remember like the dark room and seeing this horror movie that like the first, half an hour, like plays with like the lighting and things like that really well for a character that like hides in the shadows and things of that nature. And it just had like
it ties everything together.
It makes it feel like so much more of a viewing experience and like you're part of the movie and like secluded from everything else. Whereas when I watch it at home, I just will never get that same experience because I can't block out all the noise that's outside of me.
Think about how easily distracted you are at home too.
Yeah.
Our phones are always, arm's length.
Or the option to turn my Xbox on. It's like you're like, we are ADD people at this point, right? We have so much different stuff at our disposal that it is just really hard for me to get into a movie and just watch a 2-hour movie. Like I've been wanting to watch Inception recently, like rewatch that. But that's like a 2.5-hour movie that I'm like, I don't think that I could watch that in one viewing just sitting at my house. But they had it in the movie theaters when they first reopened movie theaters like 2 weeks ago. And I was like, damn, I should maybe think about going and see it there because like I can't get up and leave. And like I'm not gonna like I might pull up my phone every once in a while because that's the beauty of going by yourself is like I can pop into like the phone myself and do other stuff if I want to, but like once I get into it, like I'm watching it, it's there. I'm like everything else is closed out of my mind. And to your point, the audio and everything, you feel all this stuff differently than you would at home.
And you can see why, as we're going through this, why you spend to go to the movies, right? Mm-hmm. Why it's worth that investment, and why someone like you, who it's a part of your everyday, your every week schedule where you're enjoying those movies.
I cut out time, like I was cutting out time weekly.
I remember there's times you didn't want to hang out with me because you're like, I'm going to the movies this day.
Priorities, buddy.
Yeah, no, I get it. I'm very low on that totem pole. Yeah. But the discussion around drive-in movie theaters, the discussion around taking in content at home, I'd like to consider myself a homebody. I prefer to be home. I'm not someone that enjoys, of course I enjoy being out with friends and family, but I'm not that person that needs to go out to have a good time. But the idea of not having a movie theater to go to, that would be very difficult to come back from.
Funny enough, I think, like I said earlier, the biggest thing for me was getting past that point of being comfortable going to the movies by myself, because once I got comfortable with that, it's the biggest extension for me from being at home, right? Because it allows me to still not really have to not to say I'm antisocial, but I am comfortable by myself. And I'm an only child. I've lived my life being able to entertain myself, right? So you put me in a movie theater by myself, nobody's going to talk to you. I wish we had more time, because I would tell you the time that I did have the guy talk to me when I was watching Hustler, the Jennifer Lopez stripper movie.
I'm not okay with that.
And we were sitting in the handicap seats in the back where it's just the two of you sitting by yourself, and the guy wanted to talk to me while J-Lo was half naked on the screen. What a weird person.
Maybe that's his MO. Maybe that's how he picks up guys.
Yeah, it might have been, dude. His hands were greasy from the popcorn.
Yikes.
So I like that experience because it is a little bit secluded and you're left alone and you don't have to talk to anybody.
I know why you're going to the movie theaters by yourself, and it scares me.
What was it, Pee Wee Herman or something like that got
Don't bring Pee Wee into this.
Sorry, dude.
Love Pee Wee Herman. I don't need to know that he was jacking off in movie theaters.
100% was, though.
Oh, well, now that we know why you go to movie theaters by yourself, now that you know that you're going to be catching movies again, any concerns?
I'm not overly worried. I haven't been worried about any of this. I work with the general public, so I'm already going to come across it at some point if I am,
Yeah, absolutely.
For you, where you don't have the immediate want or need to jump in there, and you have other things that are going to kind of be obstacles that you have to line up to go to the movies, what kind of movie at this point would draw you out of your boycott of the movie theaters?
Yeah, I think it's not even.
It's
a forced boycott.
Right?
But I think that it would come down to, when you're in a relationship, the idea of being able to go see a movie that only you're interested in is very, very daunting. And then the idea that you'd have to, find a babysitter, go see this movie. So as excited as I get for the Batmans out there, for the Marvel movies that come out, those would be the ones that I would be willing to go see. I would guarantee it that somewhere along the line, I'm going to get stuck going to see some type of romantic comedy that's an hour and 26 minutes long.
I only ask you to go see those every so often.
Yeah, and I'm okay doing it with you, but with the wife, she just doesn't take in the content like you do.
Crazy Rich Asians 2, here we come.
I am ready for that. Yeah. Sign me up.
Mahjong, baby.
I don't think you topped that first one.
Yeah, that was
a good movie.
Good flick.
If you want to talk about how to put yourself on the map, you do it with that movie right there.
Hell of a film.
Well, as always, we love the content that we talk about here.
Yeah, this was a fun one, man.
when we think about movie theaters, when we think about going back in, do you think you're going to be limiting the amount of movies that you go see, or do you think you're going to get back into that habit of going, a couple times a week?
Listen, the problem I have right now is actually just deciding whether or not keeping my membership is worth it. Yeah. Like, I pay $25 a month and I can see 3 movies a week, right? So in theory, I could see up to 12 a month. The issue I'm running into right now is, are there enough movies worth it right now for me to justify that $25? Am I going to be able to go to the movies 4 times in a month to get my money out of it? Yeah. Because right now, like, New Mutants, so, right? Unhinged, like, that seems like a movie I could wait to see when it's on TV at some point. And then you get into Tenet being the thing that's kind of driving me because it's more of a cinema viewing experience.
It's pulling you in.
Yeah. And if I see Tenet, now I'm at the point where I'm probably going to see a New Mutants or something like that, because now I have to get my money's worth out of what I'm paying for. But I am still on the fence. I was on the fence about just canceling my membership altogether and waiting until they figure out what's kind of going on and what movies, because so many movies are getting pushed to 2021 and 2022 that we just don't know what's going to be available to make these things worth it. But at the same time, it's kind of like how they were telling you when Corona first happened to buy gift cards, right? Because the things that are going to keep restaurants opening is when they know that people have money out there to come back and spend, right? So me keeping my membership available just lets the movie theater know that there's still people that want to go to the movies.
We're waiting for you.
And so, like, it is a tough thing for me. And I'm sure most people out there aren't going to have to think about the movies the same way I am. But there are, like, cinephiles out there and all that stuff.
No,
and,
I think there are people out there that are struggling the same way that you are right now.
I went to rebuy tickets to Tenet, and a lot of them are sold out. So, like, there's definitely a demand out there. But, I care about it. So, like, I do want to, I probably will just keep my membership active. It's $25. That, to me, it, like, feels like something I love, and, like, it's worth investing.
Also feels like you're doing your part to kind of hopefully eventually see that 30%. If done the right way, have that improve a little bit more. Yeah.
And, like, now I was talking about the other day, like, how do you change the viewing experience? Because I think that needs to be the next step here. Because if you're never going to be able to go back to 100% capacity in a movie theater, now you have to change the experience. And I'm not talking about 4D. I'm not talking about mist and smells and shit like that. I'm saying that and I don't have the answers.
You're talking Ferrari seats.
But you've already done that kind of, I just think that there's something here that you need to figure out a hook or a gimmick or something like that to drive people to want to come and check it out. That's not just the movie right now. Yeah. And you've got an opportunity to maybe play around with that.
Yeah. So if you're out there and you're like Lenny, you're having trouble finding content, for everyone that needs something to watch, there's a subscribe button right down there. Now, we know it's probably over there.
Over there.
Might be over there.
Here?
Anywhere under there. We know you're watching, but you might as well go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Don't be shy. Come back and see us each and every week, because we're going to be right back in here next week, where we're going to possibly do a review on that Alistair Overeem fight. If it's worth it, maybe. Who knows? But tons of things to look forward to.
Hopefully there's some news out there next week that we can dive into. And we'll have another fight coming up, I'm sure, the week after that we can get into.
But there is one big thing to get excited for. The X-Men Exploration, baby.
Yep, episode 1 out on the channel. I think I'll put in a link somewhere.
Somewhere.
Up there?
Over here.
I don't fucking know. But I'm going to try and put it in. So keep an eye out for that. Click on it, please. We're really proud. We're really excited. We're going to be getting done with a couple episodes this week so we can kind of get the ball rolling. But check out the intro. Kind of get into our minds a little bit. Pick our brains a fair bit here.
And get ready to take this journey with us. So as always, like, comment, share, subscribe.
Comment.
We'd love to hear from you. But we're for those with good taste, and we're out of here.
See you later.